It's all yours.
Everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
So, first thing I was wondering is financial news. It seems like everybody's obsessed with financial news for obvious reasons in the last few months in a way that I don't think we were before. And I'm wondering, have you found yourself suddenly more popular? Are people from high school calling you up? You get buttonholed at parties?
I'm getting a lot of Facebook friends all of a sudden. No. Yeah, it's a great time to be a financial journalist, I think. It's a big responsibility. And for once, your story could make the cover of a mainstream media outlet. Financial news is the cover story in a lot of ways.
For better or worse?
For better or worse. I think for better. For now. People need the information.
Well, you guys are the ones who know. Better or worse? Is it? Are these green shoots that we're hearing
Are you
about?
talking about the journalism or the finance?
Oh, well, I'm curious about the finance for one.
And there's certainly a lot of things going on right now that give the feel of a bottom. If you look at some of the earnings reports, you have companies saying they feel like things have begun to turn around. If you look at the economics numbers, their production has dropped further than demand, so that's a good sign that things may be heading up. I think the way the smartest people I talk to put it is that it looks like we're somewhere near the bottom, but don't expect us to come off the bottom very quickly or a lot between now and the end of the year.
Today we had the Chief Financial Officer of Wells Fargo, and he must have outlined 7 different things that indicated how good business is right now. Okay? That's great. I said, oh, so the green shoots are starting to look like green stocks? Except I think these green stocks may turn brown here and there. If you pick apart and you do a little forensic journalism, which is something, if you're going into journalism, trust me, it's something you better learn how to do and be really skeptical. You see that there are billions and billions of dollars in what are called level 3 assets. I won't bore you, but they're the really bad stuff. Wells Fargo has $72 billion. I'm sorry, J.P. Morgan has $72 billion. Goldman Sachs, $59 billion. That stuff doesn't just go away. Mm-hmm. So while right now it looks like we're seeing that bottoming process, which I completely agree with Alan on, I think that there are further shoes to drop in all of this. And I don't mean to be negative, but that's what we see.
Could be a long, rocky bottom.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Speaking of your level 3 assets, is
Yes.
that what you call them? Are you surprised by how conversant the people in your life have suddenly become about CDOs and credit default swaps and all that?
Exactly. When the taxi cab driver says, oh, what about those credit default swaps? It's like, okay, wait a minute. Maybe this is the bottom. When the proverbial taxi cab driver was trying to sell you internet stocks back during the dot-com bubble, that should have been an indication that it was the top. But yeah, I think, and this is all a good thing, I think that people who are now turning to read the Journal and to watch Fox Business and other media outlets that specifically look at financial news are becoming more self-educated.
But I'm not sure it's a good thing. I think people are watching because they're mad. They really feel like they've been ripped off. Mm-hmm. And that, you talk about the shoots popping up along the bottom. I think you're going to see this, you're going to see change in 3 stages. We'll have the financial crisis and the bad assets. That will get cleaned up first. The economic effects will last a little bit longer. Yeah. But in my mind, the longest lasting effects of this are going to be the political effects. Just the anger out there about what happened and how it happened, the people who were making tens or hundreds of millions of dollars a year on the way up and then showed up at the Treasury door asking for a bailout. I don't think people are going to get over that very quickly. And one of the big questions that hangs over the future of our economy, I think, is how the political system deals with all that anger without destroying the economic system.
I think one silver lining might be, talking about long-term effects, something that I'm seeing on a daily basis is that consumers and everyday people, we're getting smarter, we're getting savvier. In the sense that we're saving more, we're reevaluating our goals, we're reevaluating what's important to us. The cover of a lot of mainstream media, Time Magazine, I read an interesting article a couple of weeks ago, which was talking about, how the world is changing. What was the quote? The world as we know it is changing, but the world isn't over. The world as we know it is over, but the world isn't over. There's going to be a new world after this goes to bed.
The new
and,
normal.
Yeah, the new normal. So, and it was hopeful. It was, in some ways, very positive, and we're seeing people make some changes in their lifestyles already. And early on, we were saying, well, it depends on how long the recession is going to be. These changes people are making, shopping smarter, refinancing their mortgages. Maybe it's just short term. Maybe it's just a blip. Maybe they'll just do this for now. But the recession is, as far as we know, here to stay for a little bit longer. And I think as a result, people's lifestyles are going to change permanently. And I hope for the better.
Let's come back a little bit to the anger, actually. That's I know that one thing we're here to talk about tonight, and that people have been talking about a lot over the last few months, is the question of responsibility, specifically as it applies to the financial press. Now, this is something that has been almost beat to death, and I hope tonight we can put a definitive answer to it. Does the financial press have responsibility for what's happened, or is that the wrong way to think about it? I mean, a lot of people have drawn analogies to the way that the political press sort of fell down on the job on the question of weapons of mass destruction before Iraq. Is that an apt analogy? And is there somewhere an alternate universe in which the financial press did everything right, and because of that, the financial crisis, the really bad recession was averted? Whoever wants to pick this one up first.
Well, the financial press certainly didn't do everything right. I think we can all pretty quickly agree on that. But I don't think there were sort of big weapons of mass destruction out there that we weren't talking about and writing about. I mean, let's look at what the problems were. I mean, start with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the fact that you had a system that was built, in effect, to provide profits to private shareholders, but to leave all the risk in the hands of the taxpayers. I can tell you, we were writing about that for a decade, on the front page of the paper over and over again. When I was Washington Bureau Chief, I spent a good bit of my time fielding angry phone calls from the folks at Fannie Mae who had this incredible press-bashing machine saying, how can you write that stuff? So on that one, it seems to me the press sounded the alarm for a long time. The fact that we were over-leveraged, we talked about this on CNBC throughout the last decade.
I used to be at CNBC, and we did talk about that.
Yeah, I'm sorry to sort of blow your cover and remind people that you had a previous life.
I owe CNBC a lot. They put me in a position where Fox Business wanted me. How about that? Can I just say something? We've got a lot of students in here who might want to be in journalism. Get ready for the blame the media game no matter what happens, okay? This whole let's blame the financial media thing, I get a little annoyed by that, and here's why. We had people on Fox Business, literally the first month we launched, October of 2007, coming on and saying things like the Dow will go below 10,000. It was at 14,000 and change at that point. People would laugh. Okay, there were other panelists that we would bring on, but we had that voice out there. Peter Schiff of Euro-Pacific Capital is a well-known bear. He's been wrong on certain things, but he was right on that. June 2008, before the entire implosion, although Bear Stearns was already, DOA, but we had voices on Fox Business. I don't speak for other people except to say that the Journal would always have articles specifically about Fannie and Freddie. The New York Times, Floyd Norris, I can remember him doing an article 2 years ago saying, I'm looking at auto sales right now, and they are indicating to me that we are going to have a serious problem in the U.S. auto industry.
You know what? Yeah, go ahead.
Well,
I'm sorry, finish.
And these are all great points. I think that the problem is that those reports were not on the front pages at that time. Right now, financial news is all of a sudden center stage. And so I think the distinction here is how the mainstream media covers the financial industry and how financial journalists cover the financial industry. If you're somebody who's in the industry and you're reading the Journal every single day, you may have a different perspective on how the media handled what happened in the past decade and arguably in the past year or two. But if you're somebody who's just reading USA Today, sometimes I like to blame the consumer, the reader. You have to diversify what you're reading.
Yeah, cancel that USA Today subscription and get the Wall Street Journal. I think it's pretty straightforward.
I think that there's a clear distinction, at least from my perspective, that the financial journalists, we cover it from head to toe. And then when things go bad, you only hear the bad, and it's printed on the cover of every single newspaper. And then it's like, well, why didn't you warn us? Why didn't you tell us? And so you have to sort of look at the process.
You know, Jeff made the comparison to political journalism. It's very similar in this sense. During an election, you write about the candidates, you write about their positions, you do your investigative reporting, but at the end of the day, people have to decide who they're going to vote for. And none of us stand up afterwards and say, oops, you made a big mistake. You know, that's not our job. I think financial journalism is very similar. I mean, Liz tries to get guests on to sort of air all the issues. We do our best to try and write and investigate and find out what's going on. But at the end of the day, the participants in the marketplace put their money on the line.
Participants, you know, talk about real people who are really most guilty, Jeff. I look at this and I say, what about the analysts who are paid to cover these businesses like Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers, people at S&P, Fitch, Moody's, the ratings agencies, they weren't on it. And the people who would have stood the most to gain by seeing it, Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers, didn't see it, and now they don't exist today. We, the media, I know I didn't put $200 billion in derivatives exposure on Bear Stearns books.
I mean, you
Fox Business didn't do that.
You can't fault us for instance, the ratings agencies. You know, if I look back and say, boy, I wish we had been tougher on exposing the conflicts of interest that were built into those rating agencies that led them to grade these bonds AAA that turned out to be junk. So, you know, obviously there are things we could have done that we didn't do.